character-driven stories are concerned, video games are not movies. And I realize I say that as somebody who, like, 2 weeks ago opened with a quote from a screenwriting book, but don't fucking worry. Don't fucking worry about that. In a regular movie, you don't need to care about every single character. Let's take 24, the TV show 24, the first season, Jack Bauer's daughter gets kidnapped, and everyone hates Jack Bauer's daughter, Kim. She's the most fucking annoying person on the planet. But we don't care. We don't need to care because she's not our daughter. We don't need to feel the same things for Jack does. She just needs to be there as a thing, as a catalyst that makes Jack Bauer go off and torture people and cut their fingers off. And that makes it entertaining and emotionally involving. But in video games, it doesn't work that way. We can't just passively not really care about a character because the protagonist does. Because we're usually protagonists. In a game like Infamous, where you've got this girlfriend and this best friend who are Cole's best friend and girlfriend, but they're not my best friend and girlfriend. But the game keeps asking you to act as if they were, as if you have all these years and years of history between you two, and then asks you to make big moral decisions about what will happen to them based on your history, except you don't really have a history. I don't care about them as much as my protagonist does, so there's this weird disconnect that's only possible in video games. Mirror's Edge is another example. You spend most of the game running around as Faith, trying to save your sister from like the big evil government conspiracy forces, but she's not my sister. I don't give a shit about her. The game is telling me, no, she's your sister. You're doing all this stuff. You're beating up these people to save her because you care about her because she's your sister, but she's not. She's some character who, according to the laws of narrative in movies and TV, I only get to know her when the shit gets really, really dramatic, when the story, as it happens, actually starts. Like, you wouldn't want to start a Mirror's Edge game where Faith and her little sister are kids and you get to know them as they grow up, so you actually care about Faith's sister enough, because from a typical screenwriting point of view, that would be really boring and not necessary to the story. Because you can, in a movie, understand people's relationships and why they care about one another through context, and that's really powerful. But in a game, if I'm Faith, if I'm Jack Bauer, if I'm Cole from Infamous, I need to care about the people that the game is asking me to care about in the exact same way that the protagonist does. In media res, character development of that sort doesn't really work at all in video games, as far as I can tell. There's only maybe one character I've actually cared about who has already had a pre-existing relationship with the protagonist in the game, and that's Paige from Beyond Good and Evil. And even then, I didn't really care about him until probably the end of the game, just because I had spent some time with him. The thing for me about characters that I've really cared about is either I meet them at the same time as the protagonist, and usually, more often than not, the protagonist is sort of a blank slate. So, like, I care about Alex Vance because Gordon Freeman met Alex Vance at the same time, and the game's not forcing me to pretend to care about this background that they both had, this shared history that these two characters have that I don't. So there's not that disconnect. Whatever I and Gordon feel for all the characters that he meets there's no conflict because we're the same guy, essentially. Or, in a Metal Gear Solid game, even though Solid Snake is sort of a pre-made character on his own, you meet characters pretty much at the same rate that he does. You meet Meryl for the first time the same time Snake meets Meryl for the first time. So when she shows up in Metal Gear Solid 4, you both get that feeling of, oh shit, it's Meryl, I haven't seen her in a while. And it matches up and it feels good. That's a new sort of thing that most movies, most TV shows, most novels don't have to deal with, but games do, because player and protagonist, usually if you want there to not be a disconnect, you can probably intentionally disconnect the player from the protagonist if you want something interesting to happen, like in the big twist of BioShock. But if you want player and protagonist to be one sort of at least similar entity, there needs to be a degree of similar emotions between the two. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that you can't have a character who the player is controlling who he actually doesn't like or is horrified by. Like Kratos in God of War, I consider a villain who is downright evil. There's nothing really redeemable about him, but I kind of empathize with his hatred for the gods, and I kind of like understand why he wants to do the things that he does. So I find him like a really interesting guy to play as, because in God of War 2, you just you kill heroes. You almost only kill heroes. There are no like bad guys that you kill. It's just Hercules and Icarus and all these people who don't really deserve to die because they're decent people. But since the gameplay backs up his motivation, since the gameplay is all about hatred and violence and ripping shit up and fucking taking things head off and shitting down its face, and and since Kratos' personality is just rage and anger and stuff, and since it matches up, then you don't get a dichotomy where the game is saying one thing and the gameplay is saying something else in terms of character. Like in Infamous, to go back to that, Infamous is about, isn't it awesome to blow a guy off, please don't cut that sentence out of context, and isn't it awesome to blow a guy off a roof with a force push and then shoot him in the head as he flies down and then go down and then stamp on his corpse with a big electrical bolt? And isn't it awesome to feel like a badass if you're good or evil, really? And the gameplay says that, but the character and the plot say, you actually really care about this bitch who's been doing nothing but nagging at you for accidentally killing your sister since the beginning of the game, and she's kind of a stupid bitch, and we know she's a stupid bitch, and you know she's a stupid bitch, but for the purposes of the plot, pretend that she isn't. Pretend that you care about her. And then the character Cole really cares about his girlfriend. I, as a player, do not give two fucks about his girlfriend, and would, if I had the chance, probably shoot her in the face with a lightning bolt just because I can. In fact, the only part of God of War I didn't like was there's a boss fight, I think in the second one, where you're mixing between killing all these bad guys and like giving your life to the ghost of your wife and daughter. And gameplay-wise, that's actually a pretty cool idea of actually like giving up your life to save your family. But again, they're not my family. I don't care about what happens to them at all because they're not. I can pretend, I can try and reach and really feel like, oh, these people mean something to me. But it just doesn't work because it's not a matter of context and understanding how Kratos feels. I have to feel that too because I'm controlling Kratos. I am basically Kratos just for the span of time where I'm playing this game. Incidentally, in the same game, in God of War 2, there's a moment where you fight this guy in a shadowy room and you don't see who he is, and after you kill him, the lights come up and you realize it's the Spartan soldier who helped you a lot during the beginning of the game, who was like the only nice guy you've ever met, and now you've killed him. And like Kratos and I both at the same time sort of felt a shock and disgust and horror. And that was a much more emotionally effective moment to me, even though the idea of giving up your health to save your family is like gameplay-wise and thematically so much more interesting. Just the fact that Kratos and I were on the exact same page where this guy was concerned hit me so much more emotionally. I mean, a lot of this shit just comes down to not shitty writing and making sure that you don't fuck up in other ways too, because like Prince of Persia, I meet Alika at the same time that the prince does, but I still didn't give a shit about her by the end of the game, even though the game really, really wants you to and really thinks that you do. So it's I don't want to be too reductive and suggest that the only thing that matters is that you meet characters at the same time, or that you can only have characters that you care about if you meet them at the same time as the protagonist. But I just want to point out that at least some of the basic narrative assumptions about the way games should work in media res storytelling, you know, in contextual characterization, I just don't feel like they work as well in the medium of video games as most modern writers seem to think they do. Which is why when you get someone like Rihanna Pratchett to write Mirror's Edge, she's very experienced in other mediums, but video games aren't those other mediums. And I would love to see more writers trying to work from the ground up with video games and come up with a new method of telling a story rather than just saying, oh, this works in movies, and movies are a more mature and established medium than games are, so let's just take this and take this. And video games are adorable, but we'll use movies to prop them up and make them better. It doesn't really work that way, I don't think. But that's all I've got for this week. If you have anything you want to say or want me to rant about or whatever, either leave comments below or email me at revrantanthony@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.